Chuck Harold, SecurityGuideTV.com. My next guest, what's your name, sir?
John Kufos.
And what's the name of your organization?
So I'm the National Director of Reentry Initiatives at Right on Crime in Washington, D.C.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. And you're on a panel talking about protecting youth.
That's right.
What is your part in that panel? What are you talking about?
Sure. So at Right on Crime, we deal with criminal justice policy and criminal justice reform, prioritizing public safety, of course.
Okay.
So what we talked about a lot was areas where the security industry can innovate and be part of those policy conversations. I can tell you, I was part of the team, a very large team that helped pass the First Step Act, right, federally.
Yeah.
And when I was in the Oval Office during the signing, we didn't see anyone from the security industry there. And I think that's fascinating when you think of criminal justice reform, particularly juvenile justice reform, when we know that these folks are going to be coming out to the community, yet the professionals who are securing these communities are not part of that conversation, or at least at the front end of that conversation. Yeah. I don't know that we optimize outcomes. So I talked a lot about that, and hopefully we got some more industry members excited about this piece, this business line and this piece.
Well, now that's an interesting concept. And so I'm former law enforcement, and the way law enforcement looks at security is, well, that's security, we're law enforcement. And we are superior because we're police, not superior morally, just like we have laws and things and you guys don't, right? But the irony is most people that run guard companies are who? Former law enforcement.
Sure.
Right? And so they should be at these conversations because they have both experiences. And really having both experiences of law enforcement and private security is a different skill set altogether that really has a lot to contribute. Is it getting better? Are we understanding that we need to all do this as a team to make this work?
I think so, and I think that, one of the really fascinating areas, is when you think of school security in particular, right? So there's private security who are putting different interventions inside a school, right, usually partnering with a juvenile justice officer, the police department there as well. But there's more that folks can be doing in that space, right? Because there's a whole community of public safety issues that security really should be at the table in. For example, when child study teams are thinking of IEP classifications to classify a student with ADHD or whatever that might be, right? Where is security on that? Is this person really reacting in that fashion, as the clinicians are saying, or maybe in their law enforcement or other experience, something else is at play? If you address that, right, you address the interventions earlier, and candidly, you save tomorrow's victims when you do things like that.
Well, that's right. And a lot of times people that have problems in school, security is associated some way, even loosely by notification.
Sure.
Specifically by more hands-on methods. So it just makes sense. Now, let's talk about legislation. I find across the different states, there's all kinds of different laws about these things.
That's right.
They're not even really even, and I'm not going to say even, but like fair is a good word. So in one state, somebody can get away with something. In another state, you can't. And I don't see something that's like a national standard. Now, I'm red-blooded American, all for state independence and stuff, right? Are we getting closer to come up with some things that help everybody in all states with legislation? Not federal legislation, maybe, but maybe it's state by state. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's state by state. And I think as the body of social science, as security research, and the different areas start to progress, right, you start to develop those national standards and states start to adapt. To give you an example, some states' response to juvenile justice issues are simply wave people up to the adult courts and then give them a long sentence, right?
Yeah. So
other states have a much different tack where they'll divert through a number of child service programs. So the idea is this is what we're talking about in the panel. As the social scientists move forward, the security professionals, security research professionals should also be part of that conversation, right? And then when you put the two together, you're probably going to come up with the right answer.
Do we find that we're looking at things like empathy more than punishment? Mm-hmm. And I know that sounds a little soft to some of you, but there's a component there that actually works. And I'm all about a solution that works. Almost I don't know how to get there, right? So there's different ways to get there. Are we talking about that when we look at a law? I don't want to give people breaks, but I want to understand the human condition as part of this decision.
Sure, and empathy is very important, and it also it goes with peer support, right? You see in the opioid crisis, for example, peer recovery specialists now are on the front line.
Right.
In places like D.C., violence interrupters, right? Folks who might have been to prison, who are in gangs, are the ones out there talking to the youth in partnership with law enforcement. So empathy is really important, and it's important to meet clients, defendants, suspects, people, wherever they are. And that's the key. Because as you correctly pointed out, we're moving from perhaps the old days of just let's be tough on crime and move on with our lives, because we know that hasn't worked.
Right.
But we're getting to a point where we're smart on crime. If you look at a state like Texas, Texas is kind of led the nation. The Texas model of criminal justice reform has ended up closing 8 prisons, saving billions to the great people of Texas, and the crime rate is the best it's been since like the 60s.
Oh.
So the idea, and I think we know as a practical matter, no one's going to accuse Texas of being soft on
That's
crime
true.
anyway.
That's true.
So at the end of the day, the smart on crime revolution, so to speak, probably began in Texas, and other states, when they see Texas doing it, they're more likely to do it, right?
That's good news.
Because then they know that they have not only political cover, but they also have a system that looks a lot like theirs.
Right.
So I think that's some of the real innovation we're seeing. And again, Texas did lead the way there.
Well, I bring up empathy because what people forget is that the causation, probably the reason the guy's like that is along the line, there wasn't empathy involved in his childhood, decision making, something like that. And I'm not saying that, your mommy yelled at you and that caused your problem, but I am saying that people that are antisocial lack what? They lack empathy most of the time. They're not associating with the group, therefore they're antisocial, therefore they move towards criminal behavior. So I'm glad this is all kind of being looked at holistically, I guess is a way to say it. And we have all the different disciplines involved in it too. It's not just law enforcement trying to solve it, it's everybody trying to solve it.
Right, and it's not fair to leave that on law enforcement's shoulders either, right? Or on the Department of Corrections' shoulders, right? Law enforcement's there to keep us safe.
They're a responsive unit.
Right, they're not necessarily there to be social workers.
Right.
While they should be trained in those sorts of de-escalation techniques, at the end of the day, we want police being police.
Right.
And I think that as we bring more people into it, or more stakeholders into it, as you correctly pointed out, we're going to do better. I would like to see the security industry have a bigger seat at that table.
Yeah.
I think it's one that has been conspicuously absent, and I don't think for any particular reason. I think that the average security professional may not see this in his or her wheelhouse, but I think they have a very important role to play in the conversation. I'm looking forward to some conversations from our audience to further that going forward.
Fantastic. Name and website one more time.
www.rightoncrime.com.
And your name?
John Kufos.
John, very nice to meet you, my friend.
Thank you,
Good luck to you. Back in the ring here at GSX 2019, live from Chicago.